So it's no surprise that the Nintendo Switch is getting a lot of ports, from Wii U ports to last generation ports to current gen ports. It seems like the Nintendo Switch is getting a lot of ports. If you remember watching the last Nintendo Direct from Nintendo, you will know that even more ports are coming to the system. And this is not a new practice in the gaming industry. A lot of these companies like taking older versions of games and porting them over to new current gen consoles, and the Switch is no different. But one game that we're not going to be getting on the Nintendo Switch is Monster Hunter Worlds. Here's what Capcom had to say about Monster Hunter Worlds not coming to the Switch. We don't have any plans for the Switch at the moment. Part of the reason is that the title has been in development for almost 4 years. At the time, we had to commit to our hardware choices. We decided on using the most powerful current generation consoles available at the time, which was PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, so the decision was made before the Switch was even announced or on sale. It's also because for every title we decide what the best fit for hardware is for the concept. We don't just look at everything. It's more like, if we want to achieve this kind of game concept, where's the best place to achieve that? And for this title, the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One were the best fit for us. So as you can see, one of the reasons why Monster Hunter Worlds is not coming to the Nintendo Switch is because it was already in development way before the Nintendo Switch even hit the market. And even if the Nintendo Switch already hit the market the same time the PS4 or Xbox One came out, I still honestly don't think that they would have ported this over to the Nintendo Switch, just because one of their goals with Monster Hunter Worlds was the fact that they wanted to make this the best, meatiest experience you can have with Monster Hunter Worlds. And Monster Hunter really never had that experience. And in order to do that, they need to make sure that they're putting this on the best console they can possibly put it on in terms of graphics and specs and things like that. And that place is going to be the PS4 and Xbox One. So I can see why Capcom decided to go with the Xbox One and PS4. Will this ever get ported over to the Nintendo Switch? There's really no way of knowing. But I honestly, personally, I don't think this game is coming to the Nintendo Switch anytime soon or ever, just because if you look at the Monster Hunter Worlds game, Monster Hunter Worlds is a game that's a very big, meaty experience, and I just don't think the Nintendo Switch would be able to run this game. And even if it was able to run this game, what kind of frame rates are we going to be getting out of Monster Hunter Worlds if this game is ported over to the Nintendo Switch? Are we looking at sub 30? Are we looking at 30? And sometimes 30 anymore is just not any good, because once you play a game that's 60 frames per second and you move to a game that's 30, it just is not a very good experience. And some developers are going to agree 30 frames per second is just not a good experience anymore. So I can see why Capcom may not want to put this on the Nintendo Switch. And when it comes to games, there'll be a lot of reasons why developers aren't going to put games on the Nintendo Switch. For instance, power is everything. Sometimes it's not necessarily everything, because of course, if you look at the success of the original Wii and you look at the success of the Nintendo Switch, customers and consumers and gamers just don't really care about power. Power does not necessarily mean everything. The Nintendo original Wii sold over 100 million units, and now the Nintendo Switch sold 10 million units. As long as you have a good concept, and as long as games look somewhat decent, people are going to gravitate toward your console and buy all your console stuff, and it's going to sell really well. But the thing is, when it comes to developers, on the other hand, some developers are going to be like, there's not enough power to put our game on the Nintendo Switch, so we're not going to put our game on the Nintendo Switch, just because the Nintendo Switch does not have a lot of power. And sometimes they physically can't put their game on the Nintendo Switch, because when they try to build their game for the Nintendo Switch, there's just not enough power there at all, so they can't put their game on the Nintendo Switch, just because it's physically not possible with the type of processing capabilities of the Nintendo Switch and stuff like that. So it's not physically possible. So I can see why a lot of developers won't want to put their games on the Nintendo Switch, because their dream is to make a very big, rich, the best looking game they can possibly make, and the Nintendo Switch is not that. Now, when the Nintendo Switch came out in 2017, the Nintendo Switch was already outdated in terms of power. Sure, the PS4 and Xbox One had more power than the Nintendo Switch, but what I'm talking about is the Nintendo Switch had already an outdated mobile chipset. It's running the Tegra X1, and the Tegra X1 has already been out prior to the Nintendo Switch. The NVIDIA Shield products had the Tegra X1 chipset. Don't get me wrong, the Tegra X1 chipset is a very good chipset, and we're already seeing a lot of really great things out of the Tegra X1 chipset. For instance, we got games like Skyrim and Doom. For instance, Doom is a game that came out in 2016, and Doom is blowing my mind. That's right, Doom is very, very good. I'm surprised that game was even able to be on the Nintendo Switch with the Tegra X1. Sure, it's not the same as like the PS4 or Xbox One version, but to get that game to run at 30 frames per second, my mind was blown, just because that game is a very meaty experience. The graphics are very very rich and stuff like that. So I'm pretty surprised they got that game to run on the Tegra X1 chipset. And as you guys know, the Tegra X1 chipset is a mobile processor. It's not a desktop class processor. It's not even close to what we have on the Xbox One or PS4. So you can see why a lot of developers just aren't going to put their games on the Nintendo Switch, because it doesn't have the same power. So power does matter when it comes to developers, but it doesn't necessarily matter when it comes to a lot of people actually gravitating towards these consoles that don't have a lot of power. Another reason why developers may not want to publish their games on the Nintendo Switch is because if they make a game that's multiplayer focused, they may look at the Nintendo Switch and be like, the Nintendo Switch doesn't have a great online infrastructure. And that is true. The Nintendo Switch doesn't have a great online infrastructure. If you look at the Nintendo Switch, we don't have dedicated servers. We only have peer-to-peer servers. We don't have a way to physically chat with people. We do through the Nintendo's official app, but that's just not the great experience. We can't send messages to users on the Nintendo Switch. Overall, the Nintendo Switch does not have a great online infrastructure. And that might be enough to keep some developers away, especially if you're a game that's going to be primarily focused on online multiplayer aspect. Then they may look away from the Nintendo Switch because they don't like the whole environment and they don't like the online aspect, so they may not put their games on the Nintendo Switch. But there's just a lot of reasons why developers won't want to put games on the Nintendo Switch. And it kind of sucks at this very moment we don't actually have an official Monster Hunter game on the Nintendo Switch. Monster Hunter has had a lot of success on portable systems such as the PSP and the 3DS. The 3DS got a lot of support when it comes to Capcom and the Monster Hunter series. And even though the Nintendo Switch is not considered a dedicated console to Nintendo, it's considered a dedicated, more of a dedicated console, not a dedicated handheld. Excuse me, I wanted to say dedicated console. I mean dedicated handheld, not dedicated console. I'm all over the place right now. Even so, that's not the case. Capcom may see the Nintendo Switch kind of as a handheld, and we're probably going to get a Monster Hunter game. I know that there's already a Monster Hunter game on the Nintendo Switch right now. I think it's in Japan. It's not localized in the West, and some people are kind of mad at that. You can, since the Nintendo Switch is a region-free device, you can go ahead and buy that game and play it on your Nintendo Switch, providing, of course, you know Japanese, and that kind of sucks we haven't got that game localized in the West yet. But I'm pretty sure a Monster Hunter game is going to come to the Nintendo Switch somehow, some way, and it's going to come to the West, believe it or not, because Monster Hunter games have becoming more popular in the West just due to how much success they have had on the Nintendo 3DS system. So I don't see why we wouldn't get a Monster Hunter game. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.